Welcome to National Eyes. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates in global commerce. The biggest shifts often happen quietly, behind closed doors, in boardrooms, and across negotiating tables. These changes rarely make headlines until the effects are felt in our daily lives. Sometimes the catalyst for a seismic shift is something as simple and familiar as coffee, a drink that connects millions of people every morning, from bustling cities to remote villages. Today, October 10th, 2025, marks a turning point. Canada and Brazil have finalized a $12 billion trade agreement focused on coffee, a deal that's set to send shockwaves through the global market and alter the way nations do business with each other. This isn't just about agriculture or a single commodity, it's about forging new alliances, shifting loyalties, and recalibrating the balance of power. The price of coffee is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, it's a contest over influence, security, and economic survival. The world just woke up and smelled a very different coffee. For many, this news is as jarring as a double espresso, unexpected, bold, and impossible to ignore. This deal marks a strategic realignment in the Americas, a direct response to an increasingly protectionist United States. As the U.S. tightens its borders and trade policies, its neighbors are adapting, seeking new partners and opportunities. Nations are no longer waiting for Washington to set the rules, they're forging their own paths, building networks that bypass old power structures and create new ones. For Americans, this could mean your daily latte is about to get pricier. The cost of imported coffee may rise and your favorite cafe might have to rethink its menu or raise prices to keep up. For Canada, it's more than just a new market, it's a chance to secure a steady supply of coffee, strengthen its economy, and assert itself as a key player in global trade. For Brazil, the world's largest coffee producer, this agreement is a lifeline. It offers stability for farmers, leverage in future negotiations, and a way to diversify away from traditional partners. This agreement redraws the coffee trade map, rerouting millions of pounds of beans from American to Canadian ports. The logistics, the profits, and the power are all shifting northward. In the coming scenes, we'll break down how this historic deal came to be, the intricate details behind the negotiations, and what it all means for your morning routine, whether you're in New York, Toronto, or Sao Paulo. This is a story that affects your wallet, your coffee, and the balance of power in the Americas. It's about more than just a beverage, it's about the future of global trade. The world is changing, one coffee bean at a time. And as we'll see, even the smallest seeds can spark the biggest revolutions. To grasp the impact of this deal, you need to understand Brazil's dominance in coffee. For over 150 years, Brazil has been the world's top producer, shaping global supply and prices. The sector employs over 8 million people and defines the nation's economy. Brazil's vast land, ideal climate, and efficient farms make it indispensable to coffee importing nations, especially the U.S. But this dominance brings risk. Relying on a few major buyers leaves Brazil vulnerable to trade disputes. That's why Brazil has been diversifying, seeking new partners in Asia, Europe, and now, Canada. This proactive strategy set the stage for today's landmark deal. The catalyst for this realignment? A revived brand of American trade policy in summer 2025. In July, President Trump threatened a 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee, demanding new trade terms. This was part of a broader protectionist push. Vietnam and Indonesia faced similar tariffs earlier that year. For Brazil, the U.S. was its largest coffee customer. A 50% tariff would have been devastating, pricing Brazilian coffee out of the American market overnight. Instead of capitulating, Brazil accelerated talks with other partners. The tariff threat turned simmering negotiations with Canada into an urgent priority. The very policy meant to assert U.S. dominance drove Brazil into Canada's arms, setting up today's historic deal. Sometimes, a single threat can change the course of global trade. With the U.S. market in jeopardy, Brazil pivoted fast. On August 15, 2025, Brazil and Canada revived stalled free trade talks with new urgency. Within days, Canada's trade minister flew to Brasilia to fast-track negotiations. Behind the scenes, teams worked around the clock, focusing on agriculture, technology, and especially coffee. The goal was clear: build a stable trade corridor, shielded from U.S. unpredictability. By September, negotiations intensified, covering tariffs, quotas, and investment protections. Today, October 10, 2025, the $12 billion deal is signed, expanding on $9.1 billion in existing trade. What began as a reaction to a threat became a strategic masterstroke for both nations. Swift diplomacy and shared vision have fundamentally altered the economic landscape. A new era of cooperation in the Americas has begun. The Canada-Mercosur agreement is comprehensive, but coffee is at its heart. Brazilian beans will now flow to Canada tariff-free, redirecting supply from the US. The deal also slashes tariffs on Canadian industrial goods and opens Mercosur markets to Canadian exporters. In return, Canada lowers barriers for Mercosur's agricultural products, beef, sugar, ethanol, and more. Crucially, Brazil guarantees a substantial annual quota of top-grade coffee for Canada, securing supply for Canadian roasters and cafes. For Brazil, it means a reliable customer and stability for its growers. Both sides hail the deal as a model for resilient cooperative trade. This isn't just a transaction, it's a blueprint for a new kind of partnership. For Canada, the deal means more than just stable coffee prices. It signals a new era of economic confidence for both consumers and businesses. Canadian families can enjoy their morning brew without worrying about sudden price hikes, while local cafes and restaurants benefit from predictable costs. The agreement also opens up new export opportunities, potentially creating thousands of jobs in shipping, packaging, and logistics. Canadian companies can now expand their reach, sending high-quality products abroad and strengthening the nation's economic foundation. Economists predict a notable GDP boost as increased trade and job creation ripple through the economy, benefiting communities from coast to coast. For Brazil, it's a strategic win, a secure market and protection from US tariffs. Brazilian coffee growers now have a reliable partner in Canada, ensuring steady demand for their beans. This stability safeguards the livelihoods of millions of workers, from rural farmers to urban factory employees, and helps Brazil maintain its position as a global coffee powerhouse. Meanwhile, the US faces a very different reality. Higher coffee prices, disrupted supply chains, and a weakened trade relationship with Brazil, its largest coffee supplier. American consumers are already feeling the pinch at the checkout counter. US coffee roasters now face a tough choice: absorb the new tariffs and shrink their margins, or pass the costs on to consumers, making every cup more expensive. Some scramble to find new suppliers, but none can match Brazil's scale, quality, or reliability, leaving the industry in a precarious position. The US coffee industry, long a net positive for the economy, now faces turmoil and the threat of job losses across the supply chain. Small businesses and workers are especially vulnerable as uncertainty grows and profits shrink. The tariffs, intended to protect American interests, may end up hurting them most, sparking debate in Congress and protests from both business owners and consumers. This deal is a wake-up call. Trade policy has real, immediate consequences that ripple through every level of society. The coffee world has shifted, and so has the balance of power. The choices made today will shape the future of coffee and the economies of these three nations for years to come. Deal architects are calling this agreement a strategic victory for multilateralism and economic resilience. In a world where global alliances are constantly shifting, this pact stands out as a bold move to strengthen international cooperation and reduce vulnerability to market shocks. By bringing together diverse stakeholders, the deal signals a renewed commitment to open dialogue and shared prosperity. Brazil's Foreign Trade Secretary, Tatiana Prazeres, emphasizes that the agreement is proof Brazil won't be dependent on a single, unpredictable market. She highlights how this partnership with Canada opens new doors for Brazilian exporters, providing them with more options and greater security in uncertain times. For Brazil, it's a step toward economic diversification and long-term stability. Coffee industry leaders in Brazil see the Canadian deal as a vital safety net, ensuring stability for millions of workers and their families. They believe this agreement will help shield the industry from sudden disruptions, such as trade disputes or supply chain breakdowns, and allow Brazilian coffee to reach new markets with fewer barriers. Exporters are already reporting increased interest from Canadian buyers, and many hope this momentum will inspire similar deals with other countries. Meanwhile, US coffee groups warn that tariffs will hurt consumers and damage American brands. Industry representatives argue that higher prices could drive customers away and erode brand loyalty, especially as global competition intensifies. They fear that American companies may lose their edge if trade barriers persist. Trade experts say this is a textbook case of how coercive policy can backfire, leading to unintended consequences for both producers and consumers. Analysts point out that when countries impose tariffs or restrictions, it often triggers a chain reaction, forcing businesses to adapt quickly or risk losing out. Dr. Isabella Montoya of the Peterson Institute notes, "This deal shows middle powers can team up to create new economic ecosystems." She adds that such alliances can help countries bypass traditional power dynamics and foster innovation in global trade. The Canada-Brazil Pact could become a blueprint for other nations navigating a fractured global trade order. As more countries look for ways to protect their interests, this agreement may inspire similar partnerships across continents. Agility and partnership are now more powerful than market size alone. In today's rapidly changing environment, the ability to adapt and collaborate is what sets successful nations apart. The rules of global commerce are being rewritten, and those who embrace change are likely to shape the future of international trade. Canada is the immediate winner, securing coffee at a stable price and boosting its global standing. Brazilian coffee finds a safe, profitable home, reducing vulnerability to U.S. pressure and strengthening Brazil's leadership in Mercosur. The U.S. loses out: higher prices, disrupted supply chains, and diminished influence in the Americas. American consumers and businesses pay the price for failed trade policy. Other coffee producers like Colombia and Vietnam may see a short-term boost, but none can fully replace Brazil's output. The market remains volatile, with secondary players benefiting from the fallout. The real winners are those who adapt quickly and build new alliances. The losers? Those who cling to old rules in a new world. The coffee game has changed. This $12 billion deal is more than a trade headline. It's a story about how global power shifts affect your daily life. The coffee in your cup is the product of a vast, interconnected supply chain. For Canadians, your morning brew stays affordable. For Americans, expect higher prices and maybe a different taste. This deal is a reminder. Economics and politics are deeply linked, and decisions made continents away shape your daily routine. The era of predictable global trade is over. Nations are forging new alliances to navigate uncertainty. The Canada-Brazil Pact is a model for resilience in a changing world. Next time you sip your coffee, remember the journey it took and the new story it tells about global power. The world is changing, one cup at a time.